I just felt like really bad because it was like, he was my friend and I never expected him to behave in such a way that became really toxic. It was really tough.
Like once I saw the red flag, I wish I told her. Let's get straight into it. I have supported a friend who was in a relationship with a guy that was just like emotionally and verbally abusive to her.
The relationship with your friend, what was it like at the start?
So she was really happy. I was happy for them. They would go on holidays together, always go out to eat. So I think within like 4 months, he went over to her family house and met the rest of the family. Like that's how like well it would go in.
Did you ever hang around the person that she was with?
Yeah, we went to a few parties together. It was very interesting seeing her partner in like a drunk state and seeing how he was with her. I felt like what we saw in 9 months in, we will sometimes see when he was drunk. So with your friend, how did they meet?
Funny enough, they met through me. She's basically one of my best friends. We've known each other since maybe the start of secondary school. So about 10 years. Really good friend. Good friend to the point that she can tell me everything, I can tell her everything. He was really interested in her. And she would always ask me about him, like, oh, is he a nice person? And naturally, him being my friend, I was like, yeah, like because he'd never actually like exposed his behaviour to me as a friend, if that makes sense. Yeah. That's also another reason why I was able to find out about his behaviour, because she would come to me like, did you know he was like this? Did you know he had this issue? Stuff like that.
Did you see any like red flag during the whole period of the relationship? Or was it like just the end where it just went all wrong?
He didn't live in London and she did. So there was a time where she travelled to see him and they must have had an argument to the point that he basically kicked her out of the house. And this was like late night to the point that there was no trains running. So she had to wait at the station until the first train, which is like 5 a.m. in the morning. So it was just random events where she was essentially left alone or she was left carrying a situation by herself, that I started to like suspect like there was more happening that she was yet to tell me. From my perspective, it was quite heartbreaking because that's my best friend. Going through that experience, it's really sad to see her personality change, her character change from what I know her as to like a shell of herself because of what she was struggling through. Yeah. So I've kind of like carried this burden that like it was my fault. I just felt like really bad because it was like, he was my friend and I never expected him to behave in such a way that became really toxic.
Wow.
Yeah.
For me, I noticed that she would like start changing herself, changing the way she dressed and how like just her personality. Like she's very like outspoken and everything, but she became more like reserved and just like, and I was just like, oh girl,
What's going on?
I'm the reserved one. No, this isn't right. This doesn't feel right. Yeah. So that was also another red flag. He would just like say things to her and then like a few minutes later he would completely change his mind. And like it would just, I used to just watch her be in like turmoil because she would just be like, oh, I feel so awful. And then she would be like, oh, I shouldn't have done this. And she would start doubting herself. So like she would plan to do something. Say like she wanted to go out that night, he would come and make sure that she doesn't go out.
So controlling.
Yeah. I just sat there and listened. Sometimes being the person listening to allow the other person to unload their burden is just enough.
Yeah, yeah. Listening helped them process through what's going on and understand what's happening. So supporting her in that time, it was hard, but it wasn't hard because she still trusted me enough to come and tell me what was going on from the start to finish. So it was quite hard to like navigate that because it's like I couldn't tell anyone because there was no one close enough to her to be able to help her in the same way I could. Because I knew both of them, it left me being the only person to actually like do anything. And like when the relationship became physically abusive, that's when I was like, okay, yeah, this needs to stop. He is no longer the person that I knew. So I said to her, like, me and him don't have a friendship anymore. And I think that made it easier for her as well because I feel like she also had a feeling of like, oh, I need to stay with him because that's also her friend. Like, that's someone she knows. And I told her, like, the person I actually only support and only love is you at this point. So it was just about like supporting her and encouraging to like call the police and stuff like that, distance themselves. Thankfully, because it was a long distance relationship anyways, but he was still able to like contact her, verbally abuse her, call her and stuff like that. There would be times where they had like a getaway, where she would stay like a hotel with him. And then even in those weekends, it would escalate to like a physical confrontation and stuff like that. So being the only person to hear that, it was really tough. But being that person for her, I think really helped her to get out of that relationship.
Do you wish you've done anything differently?
I wish I was able to, I don't know, call the police myself. Because there were times where he would take her phone, so I wouldn't hear from her. There were also times where I wished I could have like spoken to like someone that had more wisdom because we were really young at that time. This was still in secondary school. So you can imagine like someone who going through GCSEs is going through this relationship with an older person, and then I'm also going through GCSEs. So I wish I had spoken to someone maybe like in school, but like kept her anonymous. Or like spoken to maybe my mum and be like, oh, how can I better help my friend in this situation? But from my perspective, just to go up a little bit, just the same way there wasn't enough resources for someone who's deaf in that relationship. So I was very naive. I was very clueless on how to better support. So I do wish I had more access to more information on like, and I wish that like, I had researched more to know how to better support her.
I also wish that I was more knowledgeable. Like you said, there isn't much resources, and I feel like I didn't really know much about emotional and verbal abuse. Like I'm very aware about physical abuse. I know now, but then I didn't know that emotional, that verbal abuse. So yeah, I just wish I like told her earlier on.
Yeah, the thing with emotional abuse as well, seeing my friend experience that and internalize that, it became a thing of where she was blaming herself and like wishing she was a better person for him. And it was really hard to like help her get out of that mindset and like make her realize her worth enough to like be like, actually what he's telling me isn't true. Even though somewhere in the back of her mind she's like, I know it's not true. So how is the friend now? I know you've talked about it in past tense, but I'm assuming.
So after she spoke with her parent, she was like, I'm gonna stay with him. But then 2 months later, she kind of just like, I think she had enough and she didn't want to continue with this relationship. It took her a really long time. Like she went for a walk in the park to try and like figure out how she's gonna say it to him. And she asked him to join her in the park, and she broke up with him. But then afterward it became very obsessive, where he kept calling her, messaging her, all of those things. And he would come over to the house, and she was just like, have to call the police. So she called the police, and she was just like, I'm done. I don't want to ever speak to him again, because she really, you know, just harassing her now. And now, like, she's in a new relationship. She did meet another guy on a dating app again. And she's happy. She is very happy. They've been together for a year now.
Thankfully, my friend got out of the situation. They're no longer in contact. Police have to get involved and stuff like that. But thankfully, he didn't know where she lived, so he couldn't necessarily come. But through text messages, and he had pictures of her. So when the police got involved, they then had to like confiscate the phone and stuff like that, because he was using them against her and stuff like that. But yeah, she eventually just like switched numbers, deleted everything that he had contact to. Yeah, so she in a new relationship. Took her a while. She was very like on guard, especially since she went through it at such a young age as well. So she was very on guard with it. But then a couple of years later, she was able to meet someone else. And yeah, they're doing good. When it comes to relationships, do you think there's any like difficulties we experience as deaf people?
I would say not being understood. So we're very often misunderstood. Very often people tend to think of deaf people as naive and like they have no understanding of the world, and they don't have any experiences, life experiences. When we do, you probably even have more than you, like a normal like hearing person. And that's another thing, that in relationship we have all of this like baggage of our own knowledge and our own experiences, but often they're very misinterpreted in the wrong way. So
when it comes to relationships and stuff, there's communication barriers which can lead to miscommunication, which can then escalate into like much more severe situations. So like as a deaf person, it's quite unnerving to experience that. It bleeds into like so many different things. The way we're perceived in society as well. We constantly like struggle through like stereotypes. So I think it's quite difficult. And it does like put a lot of people off relationship from the get-go. Growing up and internalising all of those negative experiences has made me become really like on guard and like really like shut off in terms of like romantic relationship. So being in a relationship now where the partner is really patient and understanding is quite comforting. Do you feel like that the adults around you understand what's going on for young people?
No, they are clueless. Now, the younger generation needs support, okay? Need therapy, yeah? Need to be able to talk to the adults when something's going on in their relationship. And I feel like right now, it's just, there's not like an open communication within like black adults and younger black generation.
Yeah, they're within a safe space. So the adults around me are abled, hearing. So trying to communicate with them as a black deaf person already is a problem. But then I do see similar issues with other races anyways. And that's because of the basis of the fact that they're there. So they're at that disconnect where they can't understand them from a deaf perspective. So I feel like some adults are quite supportive, but you have to know the right ones. And to even find out who the right ones are, you go through a lot of fogs. You go through a lot of miscommunication. You go through a lot of internalizing. You go through a lot of invalidation, minimization, and stuff like that before you actually even get to encounter the right adult to speak to you. Some adults are knowledgeable and some are able to have an open mind, but others are very, no, you don't need therapy, no, you don't need this, stuff like that.
I am happy as long as you're happy, and whoever you're with, I'll always support, because you know you mean a lot to me, and if they mean a lot to you, then they mean a lot to me too. So it's important for me to see both of you happy, and I'll always like try to get to know them and like just see how they are as a person.
How am I meant to top that? My message to you would be always remember your worth. You are precious. Like, it's cheesy, but you're worth more than gold and diamonds and more, So never like let go of your value, and in times that you start to doubt yourself, even if that's in or out of a relationship, come to me, because I will take it back into you. But yeah, always remember your worth. You're valuable. As a whole, as a person.
Thank you. You topped out.
It's the poet in me. It's the poet in me.
Poetry.